The tycoon's secret. The slap that unlocked freedom. Stop. Before we dive into this heartbreaking story, tell us in the comments what English-speaking city you're viewing us from. And don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share your opinion. Your engagement helps us share more powerful stories. Hit the like button right now. Victor Thorne had everything anyone could ever dream of. A fortune built through years of relentless ambition. A powerful technology corporation that bore his name. An imposing mansion in the exclusive Upper East Side of New York City. And a wife who, to the outside world, was the perfect image of elegance, sweetness, and devotion. Eleanor. From the outside, their life was perfect. But what people didn't know was that behind those lavish facades and dinners with politicians, there was a man obsessed with control. Eleanor, his wife, had loved him with all her heart since they were young. She had supported him every step of his path to success. But over time, that love crumbled, like a sandcastle against the tide. At first, it was just his tone of voice, that way of making her feel that everything she said was wrong. Then came control disguised as care, manipulation, the decisions he made for both of them without consulting her. And finally, contempt. Sometimes he didn't even bother to hide it. He no longer saw her as a partner. He treated her as another object in his trophy case of achievements. The most painful part was that Eleanor knew that wasn't love. It wasn't the love she deserved. They had a son, Leo. A 7-year-old boy with unstoppable energy. Intelligent. Sensitive. With the most expressive eyes in the world. He was the only thing that kept Eleanor going. But even he was starting to notice that something was wrong in their home. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy laugh with you like before?" he asked her one afternoon. Eleanor was speechless. She tenderly ruffled his hair and smiled. But inside, she felt something break. "Sometimes adults have tough days, my love, but I'm always happy to have you by my side." And it was true. Leo was her reason to keep getting up every morning. Outwardly, Victor continued to play the role of the ideal husband. Dinners at upscale restaurants, expensive flowers when he remembered, gifts for Leo, costly vacations in places like the French Riviera. But all of that was just a smokescreen. Eleanor lived with constant anxiety. She felt trapped, like living in a gilded cage. She couldn't talk to anyone. She had lost touch with her friends, with her family. Victor had made sure to isolate her, little by little. Always with convincing excuses, with that sweet voice he used when he wanted to get his way. One night, after tucking Leo into bed, Eleanor sat alone on the balcony. The wind was cold, but she didn't move. She watched the city lights as if waiting for a sign, and then she felt something in her belly. It wasn't physical. It was more of a certainty. She was pregnant. Just a few days earlier, she had taken a test in secret. And now, with certainty in her mind, fear was stronger than joy. How would she tell Victor? What would he do? Would he use it as an excuse to manipulate her more? Or would he be annoyed? She didn't even know which reaction scared her more. She heard the front door close. Victor had arrived. As always, without greeting her, he took off his coat, poured himself an expensive scotch, and slumped into his armchair. Eleanor walked in, cautiously. "Is Leo asleep?" he asked without looking at her. Looking at her. "Yes," she replied. Victor nodded silently. Before, when he came home, he would approach her, hug her, make her feel special. But that was ancient history. "Victor, we need to talk." He barely turned his face, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" Eleanor swallowed. Her hands were shaking, but she couldn't stay silent any longer. "About us. About how we've changed. I'm pregnant." Silence. Victor put his glass down on the table with a sharp clink. Pregnant? And you just blurted out all of a sudden? Now? I only found out recently. I didn't know how to tell you. He let out a dry laugh, with no trace of joy. How convenient. Just as I'm trying to close one of the most important contracts of my life, you come up with this. Very timely. Eleanor felt a sharp pang in her chest. This isn't just about your work. It's our life, our family. I can't keep feeling invisible. Victor stood up with that intimidating gaze. Invisible? I've given you everything, Eleanor. You live in a house many women dream of. You wear clothes others can't even see in a catalog. And you come here to tell me I don't value you? I don't want clothes or trips, she replied, barely holding back tears. I want respect. I want to feel heard. I want Leo to grow up in a healthy home. Victor took another step, closer now. His voice turned colder. Don't start with your drama. I don't have time for that. If you want respect, start by not questioning me in front of anyone, and stop embarrassing me with that long face. Understood? And without waiting for an answer, he turned around, took his phone, and locked himself in his study. Eleanor remained in the middle of the room, trembling. She hugged herself, sat down slowly, and placed her hands on her belly. It wasn't just her anymore. She couldn't keep enduring everything out of habit or fear. It was no longer about surviving. It was about protecting her children. Leo, the baby barely growing inside her. What she didn't know was that the breaking point was closer than she imagined. A silent cry and the evidence, or two. After that night, things only got worse. Victor started talking to her even less, and when he did, it was with that dry tone, full of reproach and frustration. Eleanor tried to convince herself that it was just a rough patch, that maybe it was the stress of work, of business, of everything. But deep down, she knew that the man she shared a roof with was no longer the same. In the huge house on the Upper East Side, Eleanor walked as if on glass. Every step she took, every word she spoke, had to be measured so as not to provoke his anger. She felt like a shadow in her own life. Even Leo started noticing it more. One day, while she was sitting in the garden watching him play with his ball, the boy approached with a frown. "Mommy, why are you always sad?" Eleanor felt her soul shrink. She tried to smile, but it wouldn't come out. "I'm not sad, my love, just tired. Daddy doesn't love you anymore, does he?" The words struck her heart directly. "Leo, don't say that." "But it's true. He's always angry at you. He yells at you. Sometimes he doesn't even look at you when you talk. I see it." Eleanor didn't know how to respond. She knelt and hugged him tightly. "I don't want you to worry about that, my darling. I'm here to take care of you. Always." But as she hugged him, she promised herself that she wouldn't allow her son to grow up thinking that this type of relationship was normal. She wouldn't allow Leo to believe that love was fear. That same evening, Victor came home earlier than usual. Eleanor was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She heard the slam of the entrance door. She knew immediately that something was wrong. Victor strode into the dining room, frowning, and with his phone in his hand. "Do you have any idea the trouble you're causing?" Eleanor looked at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He threw the phone onto the table, furious. "At the gala the other day, someone overheard us arguing. Do you realize? Now there are rumors. They're saying I'm an abuser, that I'm losing control. This could destroy me." She blinked, incredulous. "Is that all you care about? Your reputation? Don't you care that Leo hears your shouts? That he's afraid when you come home?" Victor ran a hand over his face, exasperated. "You don't understand anything, Eleanor. I work every day, non-stop, to give you this life, and what do I get in return? Tears, drama. You get loneliness and growing distance," she said softly. "But you don't want to see it." Victor gritted his teeth, and for a moment, Eleanor thought he would yell at her. But instead, he turned around, muttering, "I don't have time for your nonsense," and locked himself in his study again. Leo, who had been in the living room with his game console, appeared in the kitchen, downcast. Daddy's angry again." Eleanor knelt and hugged him. "Your daddy has a lot on his mind, but that's no excuse. This is not your fault at all." Leo looked down. "I don't like the way he talks to you." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she took a deep breath so he wouldn't notice. "Me neither, my love." The days passed, each one heavier than the last. Victor plunged himself into work. He didn't ask how Eleanor was, what she felt, or even if the pregnancy was going well. It was as if the baby didn't exist. And although she tried to stay strong for Leo, there were nights when she simply lay awake in bed, wondering how she had gotten to this point. Remembering the Victor she knew when they were just students, the man who dreamed of having his own business, who laughed with her at anything. Where had that person gone? The weekend arrived, and Victor forced her to accompany him to a gala dinner at a luxurious hotel in Midtown Manhattan. Eleanor didn't want to go, but she had no choice. He always said her presence was part of his image. "Dress well, no long faces," he told her before they left. "Don't let anyone notice how miserable you feel." Eleanor gritted her teeth and didn't answer. She put on a long, dark blue dress, applied just enough makeup, and went out with him as if everything were fine. The gala was like all the others, people with glasses of expensive wine, fake conversations, and empty smiles. Victor went from group to group, shaking hands, laughing as if nothing were wrong. Eleanor could barely breathe. Halfway through the event, she went out onto the balcony for air. The cold wind brought some relief. She closed her eyes and thought for a second that she could stay there forever. Away from the noise, from the stairs, from everything. But she heard footsteps behind her. "Victor, what are you doing out here?" he said, serious. "People are asking for you. Do you think it's nice to disappear like that?" "I just needed to breathe a little," she replied without looking at him. He approached and grabbed her arm tightly. "You're making me look ridiculous, Eleanor. Let go of me, Victor. You're making a scene." She tried to pull away, and in that instant, he did something she never thought he would do. He slapped her. The sound echoed like an explosion on the terrace. For a second, everything stopped. Eleanor stood still, her face burning. When she looked up, she saw several people inside the ballroom staring at them. And among them all, one gaze froze her completely. Her son. He was there. She didn't know how or when he had arrived. She just knew he had seen her. His little eyes were wide open, his body trembling, as if he didn't understand what he had just witnessed. Eleanor didn't feel the blow on her cheek as much as she felt the dagger in her heart, seeing her son in shock. And she knew without a doubt that there was no turning back. The battle for dignity begins. Part 3. A moment that changes everything. What would you have done after witnessing such a horrifying event? Share your opinion on Eleanor's next steps in the comments. Remember to like this video and subscribe to see how this story unfolds. Eleanor didn't know how long she stayed there, her cheek burning and her heart shattered. The murmur of the guests began to fill the room. Some covered their mouths with their hands, others simply stared in silence, incredulous. And in the middle of it all, Leo was still there, completely motionless. Victor, for the first time, seemed nervous. He looked around, realizing that his blow had not been in private. Everyone had seen it. He had lost control and couldn't hide it. Eleanor took a step back, moving away from him. "Don't you ever touch me again," she said in a low, firm voice. Victor tried to say something, but his voice was choked by the tension in the air. One of the evening's most important guests, an older businessman named Mr. James Sterling, approached. He was a serious man, respected in the New York financial world. "Victor, I think it's best if you leave," he said bluntly. "This is a personal matter," Victor retorted, trying to regain his composure. "It stopped being personal the moment you hit her in front of everyone." Mr. Sterling looked at Eleanor with compassion. "Are you all right?" Eleanor could only nod, although inside she felt like she was falling apart. Several attendees approached. Some women offered her tissues. Others simply hugged her without saying anything. She had never felt so vulnerable, and at the same time, she had never felt so decisive. Victor turned around and left the ballroom amid murmurs and cold stares. Eleanor did not follow him. Leo was still at the entrance, pale as paper. Eleanor knelt in front of him. "My love, are you okay?" Leo nodded, but his eyes were full of held-back tears. "Does it hurt?" he asked, gently touching his mother's cheek. "A little, but it will pass." "I don't want to go home, Mommy," he whispered. Eleanor hugged him tightly, feeling those words pierce her soul. "We're not going back, I promise you." That night, with Mr. Sterling's help, Eleanor and Leo went to a discreet hotel on the outskirts of Manhattan. They didn't have anything but the clothes they were wearing. Her heart was pounding, but at least for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had taken a step. In the hotel room, while Leo slept soundly clutching his teddy bear, Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed and picked up the phone. She didn't know who to call. She had no friends. Victor had made sure she was distanced from everyone. But then she thought of someone. Sarah, an old college friend. They hadn't spoken in years, but Eleanor remembered her as a good person. She took a deep breath and dialed the number. "Eleanor?" A slightly confused voice answered. "Sarah, I'm sorry to call you so suddenly. I need help." She didn't have to say anything more. Sarah listened without interrupting, and when Eleanor finished, there was a moment of silence. "Where are you?" Sarah asked, her tone firm. "Tell me, and I'll come get you." Eleanor broke down in tears. "Thank you, truly." The next morning, Sarah arrived at the hotel with clean clothes, food, and a look full of concern. She didn't ask too many questions. She simply hugged Eleanor tightly and stroked Leo's head. "You are not alone," she said. Eleanor didn't know how to thank her. Sarah took them to her house on the outskirts of Seattle, a quiet place with spacious gardens and clean air. It was exactly what they needed. During the first few days, Eleanor barely spoke. She only focused on taking care of Leo and crying in secret at night. But Sarah was patient. She made her tea, kept her company in silence, and gave her space. It was almost a week before Eleanor dared to tell her everything. The control, the contempt, the times he made her feel like a burden, the yelling, the loneliness, and finally, the slap. "I saw it in his eyes that night," Eleanor said, looking at the sunset from the window. "He wasn't sorry. He was just worried that he had been seen." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She just placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then you can't go back, not for a second." "I'm not going back," Eleanor affirmed. "But I don't know how to start over. He controls everything. I have no money, no home, no job, and I'm pregnant." Sarah frowned. "How many weeks along are you?" "Just a few." "You found out a few days ago. Then it's now or never. You have to protect that baby, Leo, and yourself. No more silence, Eleanor." Eleanor felt her body tremble, but no longer from fear. It was from the strength that was starting to awaken inside her. That same day, Sarah helped her contact a lawyer specializing in domestic violence. Her name was Carmen Bell, and from the very first moment, she inspired confidence. She had a calm but firm voice and a look that said, "You are going to get through this. The first thing we're going to do is file a restraining order," she explained. "But for that, you have to be ready. This won't be easy, Eleanor. He's going to fight dirty." Eleanor gritted her teeth. "I don't care. Let him try whatever he wants. I won't let him hurt us again." And so, a new stage began. A stage of fear, yes, but also of courage. Because for the first time in years, Eleanor was choosing herself. The media counteroffensive. Part 4. For those reading the comments, Type the word justice in the comment section. Only those who made it this far will understand. Let's continue the story. The following days were like walking through a minefield. Every step Eleanor took was filled with doubt, fear, and questions. But there was also something new inside her: determination. Carmen, the lawyer, was clear from the beginning. She explained that while the complaint and the restraining order might seem like huge steps, they were only the beginning. Victor had power, influence, and contacts everywhere, and he wouldn't stand by idly. He's going to try to manipulate the story, she warned. He'll surely talk to the press. He'll want to make you look like the villain. You have to be ready. Eleanor took a deep breath. I don't care what he invents. I know what I lived through, and I'm not going to be silent anymore. And indeed, the media attacks arrived. Within a few days, several news outlets began publishing suspiciously aligned articles. Renowned executive faces difficult situation with pregnant wife. Personal conflicts affecting private life of successful Manhattan businessman. None mentioned the slap. None spoke of the fear, the yelling, the control. They only spoke of a family crisis. Eleanor expected it. Carmen did too. That's why they were prepared. They collected text messages where Victor humiliated her, emails with sharp orders, audio recordings of arguments, old photos of bruises that she, without knowing why, had saved on her phone. Carmen built a solid case file. This is what we're going to use, she said. Justice is slow, but it's not blind. And even if he has money, he can't buy everything. They also had Leo's testimony. Carmen was very careful. They didn't force him. They only asked him if he wanted to talk about how he felt. And Leo, with his soft voice, only said, I saw my daddy hit my mommy, and I don't want that to happen again. That was enough. One morning, while Eleanor was helping Sarah fold clothes in the kitchen, her phone rang. It was a blocked number. She hesitated to answer, but she did. Eleanor? The voice sent chills down her spine. Victor, I need to talk to you. This can't continue. You're destroying everything. Are you calling because you're sorry? She asked ironically. Don't play games with me, he replied aggressively. I'm willing to forget everything if you come back. You can stay in the house with Leo, even with your pregnancy, but this has to stop. Eleanor felt a mix of fury and laughter. Are you offering to take me back as if I were a prize? I'm trying to fix things. You have nothing without me. No accounts, no job, no way to support yourself. I'm your only option. You're wrong, she said calmly. I'm not afraid of you anymore. And she hung up. She stood there trembling, with tears in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from rage. Sarah approached and hugged her without saying anything. That night, as Leo was putting on his pajamas, he approached his mother with his teddy bear in his arms. Mommy, if you're sad, I'm sad too. Eleanor knelt in front of him, hugged him gently, and stroked his hair. I'm not sad anymore, my love. I'm strong. And that's different. Leo leaned his head on her shoulder. Are we going to be together forever? Eleanor's throat tightened. Yes, my darling. No matter what happens, we will always be together, and I will protect you from everything. Leo hugged her tighter. Even from Daddy? She didn't know what to answer immediately. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and said softly, From everything and everyone, I promise you. The next day, Carmen arranged an urgent meeting with a criminal lawyer and a child therapist. They knew Victor wouldn't stop. They had to protect Leo on all fronts. He's going to try to ask for custody, Carmen said. And he's going to use everything he can against you, from your financial situation to your emotional stability. He'll paint you as an unstable mother, and he'll do it with a smile on his face. What do I do? Eleanor asked. Her soul was a sea of confusion. Prove who he really is. You are not alone. We're going to fight with everything we have. Carmen gave her a list. She had to organize her documents, open a bank account in her name, start working, even if it was something simple, and gather any witness who could speak about Victor's true behavior. They also had to present evidence of the isolation, the control, how he had left her without resources. That night, when Leo was asleep, Eleanor and Sarah sat in the living room with hot tea. The silence of the house was comforting, but heavy. "I never imagined being in this," Eleanor said suddenly. "All my life I was careful. I was a good wife, a good mother. And this is how I ended up?" "No, Eleanor," Sarah told her. "This is how you are beginning. What you went through was not your fault. And what comes next is what you are going to build." Eleanor smiled at her, her eyes misty. It was true. For the first time in a long time, she had a chance to start from scratch, and she wasn't going to waste it. A few days later, Carmen called her, her voice firm. "We have a date. Preliminary hearing in 2 weeks. I need you to be ready." Eleanor closed her eyes. 2 weeks, 14 days, to prepare to face him head-on. Not as his wife, not as his victim, but as the woman who would no longer be trampled on. And as she prepared mentally with the support of Sarah, of Carmen, of little Leo, who smiled at her every time she made breakfast, she knew she couldn't lose. Not this time. She owed it to Leo. She owed it to the baby. And above all, she owed it to herself. The First Assault in Court, Part 5. The battle for freedom begins. How do you think Eleanor will fare in court against Victor's power? Share your predictions in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe for the final chapters. Time flew by, and at the same time, dragged. Each day was a mix of anxiety and hope. Eleanor got up early, made breakfast for Leo, reviewed documents, talked on the phone with Carmen, and tried not to think too much about what was coming. But there was always a moment, however small, when fear crept in uninvited. She knew Victor wouldn't sit still. She confirmed it one morning when she received a message from a blocked number. "You don't know who you're messing with. You're going to regret this." Eleanor took a screenshot and sent it to Carmen. She didn't respond to the message. She didn't react. She wasn't going to play that game anymore, but she couldn't stop her hands from trembling. Carmen responded instantly. "Save everything, every threat, every attempt at contact. We're going to use it, and you are not alone." But even so, the fear was real. That same night, Eleanor woke up sweating. She had dreamed that Victor appeared at the door, shouting her name, taking Leo. She got up and went to the boys' room. She found him asleep, hugging his teddy bear. She sat beside him and stroked him until her heart rate calmed down. "You won't touch him," she thought. "Never again." The days leading up to the hearing were exhausting. Carmen prepared her for everything. What to say, how to say it, how to remain calm if Victor tried to provoke her. They also talked with the child therapist, who evaluated Leo and prepared a report confirming that the boy showed signs of stress, fear, and excessive attachment to his mother. It was another key piece. "You are not harming him by reporting this," the therapist told Eleanor. "You would harm him if you stayed silent. This process will be difficult, but it's the only way to break the cycle." Sarah, as always, was present. Every time Eleanor broke down, she reminded her how far she had come, that she was no longer the woman who endured in silence. And the day arrived. The hearing was at the family court in Manhattan. The building was not imposing, but the atmosphere was tense. Eleanor arrived with Carmen. Victor was already there, surrounded by his lawyers, dressed in his best suit, and with that usual expression of arrogance, as if he already knew he was going to win. When he saw her, he smiled smugly. But she didn't return his gaze. She kept walking with her head held high. She was nervous, yes, but she also felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. dignity. The hearing was not public. Only the parties involved were present. The judge, a serious but fair-faced man, opened the file and began to review the facts. Carmen was the first to speak. She presented the case clearly, showing the evidence, the messages, the photos, the therapist's report, Eleanor's testimony. Victor squirmed in his seat, growing more tense with each piece of evidence. When it was his turn, his lawyer tried to shift the narrative. He said Eleanor was unbalanced, that she wanted to alienate the child out of revenge, that she herself had distanced herself from her friends and family. Eleanor took a deep breath. She expected those lies. She had heard them many times. And then, the judge gave her the floor. She stood up. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, she found strength. I did not come here for revenge. I came here to protect my son and my unborn baby. I came because I want my children to grow up knowing what respect is, not fear. Because I will not be silent anymore. The judge nodded, took notes, and called a recess. The atmosphere became dense. In the hallway, while waiting to return to the room, Victor approached. Carmen tried to interpose, but he spoke directly. This isn't over, Eleanor. You'll see what it's like to fight me. Eleanor looked at him for the first time in weeks, and she didn't tremble. I don't care how long it takes. I already won. Because I'm not afraid of you anymore. Victor clenched his jaw, but said nothing more. He turned and left. Upon returning, the judge did not issue a final judgment, but he did issue preliminary injunctions. Victor could not approach Eleanor or Leo. Visits would be supervised if the judge authorized them later. Eleanor left protected. It was not the final victory, but it was a victory. And leaving the courthouse with Carmen and Sarah, she felt something new. Relief. You did it, Sarah said, hugging her. You faced him, and it wasn't easy. But it was necessary, Eleanor replied. That night, arriving home, Leo ran into her arms. Eleanor hugged him and lifted him off the ground, laughing with a mixture of exhaustion and joy. Did you win, Mommy? She looked him in the eyes. We won, my love. All three of us. And for the first time in a long time, she said it with certainty. Epilogue. A Life with Wings, Part 6. Another internal joke for those who only check the comments. Type Big Apple Freedom. Those who made it this far will understand the joke. The days after the hearing felt strange. Eleanor had won a small respite, but not the complete battle. She slept better, but not fully. She ate more calmly, but always with a knot in her stomach. The restraining order was in effect, and Victor, at least publicly, had disappeared. But Eleanor knew he wouldn't stay quiet. She confirmed it one afternoon. Sarah came home with a serious expression, carrying the newspaper under her arm. They published an interview with him, she said, placing the paper on the table. He's saying you abandoned him for no reason, that you're depriving him of seeing his son, that it's all a misunderstanding. Eleanor took it in her hands. There was Victor's face on the front page, well-groomed, serious look, with a headline that read, A Father Devastated by a Lie. Her chest burned, not because of the lies, but because of how well he could manage his image. It had always been like this. He knew what to say, how to say it. He knew which mask to wear depending on the audience, and now he was using the media to paint himself as the victim. Carmen called minutes later. I saw the interview. Don't respond. Don't make statements. This is part of his strategy. He wants to pressure you publicly because he can no longer touch you legally. What if people believe him? Eleanor asked, feeling the knot in her throat. It doesn't matter. What matters is what the judge sees. And so far, you're doing perfectly. Hold on a little longer. Eleanor hung up and looked out the window. Outside, Leo was playing in the garden. Happy, carefree. His laughter filled the air. That was what mattered. That was what she was defending. That same evening, while reading him a story before bed, Leo asked an unexpected question. "Is Daddy ever going to come back?" Eleanor swallowed. "Perhaps at some point you can see him, but with someone else present, and only if he learns how to behave." "Then he's never going to live with us again." Eleanor looked him in the eyes. "No, my love. He's never going to live with us again. But that's not a bad thing. We're going to be okay." Leo nodded and snuggled up to her. Eleanor hugged him tighter. She felt her heart breaking, but also filling up. They were together, and that was enough for now. Carmen warned her that Victor would try to retaliate legally, and she was not wrong. A week later, a notice arrived. Victor was petitioning for joint custody. He argued that he had the right to be in his son's life, that Eleanor was alienating him for no reason, and that his company was being affected by all this scandal. Eleanor felt the pressure drop. "It can't be," she whispered. "After all this?" Carmen took a deep breath as she read the documents. "He can try, but he won't win easily. We're going to respond. We're going to prove everything we have. This is his last attempt to regain control." Eleanor felt the return to war. Again, preparing documents. Again, coordinating testimonies. Again, citing witnesses. Collecting evidence. During those weeks, Sarah became an irreplaceable pillar. She took Leo to the park, helped him with homework, cooked when Eleanor couldn't even boil water. Every night before going to sleep, Eleanor sat with her notebook and wrote what she felt. It was a kind of journal, something that helped her release everything she didn't say out loud. She wrote things like, "I can't let him win. I can't let my son think this is normal. I have to be strong, even if I sometimes want to give up." And so, time passed, until the second hearing arrived. This time, it was for custody. Everything was at stake. Victor arrived at this courthouse with the same arrogance as always. He greeted his lawyers, smiled at the press waiting outside. He looked like an actor going to a premiere. Eleanor, on the other hand, entered without makeup, with a fresh face, with a folder of papers under her arm, and Carmen's hand squeezing hers. In the room, the atmosphere was cold. The judge reviewed both case files. Carmen presented every piece of evidence in detail. The threats, the history of violence, the psychological evaluations. She showed Leo's therapist's report and presented a letter of support signed by the boy's pediatrician, which confirmed episodes of childhood anxiety since he witnessed the abuse. Victor's lawyer did what everyone expected. He attacked. He said Eleanor had manipulated the child, that she was using him as a weapon, that she was emotionally unstable, that she had no income, that she couldn't guarantee Leo a quality life. "Your Honor," Carmen said, her voice firm, "having money does not make anyone a good father, and not having it does not make anyone a bad mother. What matters is the environment, emotional stability, love, and in this courtroom, it is evident who has all of that to offer Leo." Eleanor took a deep breath. She felt her heart was going to explode, but she was there, standing, facing him. The judge did not issue his final ruling that same day. He said he would announce it in 3 days. They were the longest 3 days of her life. She spent the hours on autopilot. She played with Leo, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't sleep or eat well. She just waited. And the moment arrived. Carmen's call came early in the morning. Eleanor answered, trembling. "You won," the lawyer said on the other end. "Full custody. No visitation for now, and a mandatory review in 6 months. Until then." "He cannot approach." Eleanor didn't answer. She simply broke down in tears, a cry held back for weeks, for months, for years. Sarah hugged her tightly, and Leo, seeing her emotional, ran to hug her too. "What's wrong, Mommy?" She looked at him with tears in her eyes and smiled. "We're going to be okay. Truly we are. My love." That night, Eleanor wrote a single sentence in her journal. "I am not afraid," and she wrote it with conviction. The days passed, and something inside Eleanor began to change. She no longer woke up with a knot in her chest. She no longer checked her phone every 5 minutes expecting threats. She no longer lived expecting the next attack. It's not that the fear had completely disappeared, but it no longer commanded. It no longer dominated. For the first time in a long time, Eleanor could breathe. The news of the ruling in her favor leaked to the press, and although Victor tried to counteract it with more false statements, this time it didn't have the same effect. The scandal no longer favored him. Several people who had once feared him began to speak out. A secretary, a former partner, even a woman who had been engaged to him before meeting Eleanor. The truth began to come out, and when the truth shows its face, no power or money can stop it. Victor was not arrested, but his image was tainted forever. He lost investors, contracts, and a part of the respect he so jealously guarded. And although that didn't erase what Eleanor had suffered, it was a start of justice. Meanwhile, she began to feel alive again. With Sarah and Carmen's help, she started looking for work. It wasn't easy, of course. She had been out of the job market for years, but she had a background in interior design and good taste, so she decided to try it on her own. She designed a simple website, did some free designs for friends, and little by little, the name Eleanor Thorne, Spaces with Soul, began to circulate in the small local circle. Someone asked for her help with an apartment, then another with an office, and without realizing it, she already had 2 projects a month. She wasn't making a fortune, but it was hers. It was honest, and most importantly, it was enough. One afternoon, after dropping Leo off at a music class, she sat in a cafe by the sea. She had a notebook in her hands, the same one where she had written so many times with fear, with rage, with desperation. That day, she wrote only 3 words. "I am starting over." She looked toward the coast, the wind blowing through her hair, and for the first time, she didn't think about what she had lost. She thought about what she had gained. Freedom. Leo was a different child, too. He slept better. He ate better. He was no longer startled when someone raised their voice, and every time Eleanor told him, "I love you," he replied without hesitation. "Me too, Mommy. Always." The baby was growing strong in her belly. On the ultrasounds, everything was perfect. It was a girl, and she already had a name. Sophia. Leo had suggested it because he said Sophia sounded clean, pretty, like the sky when there are no clouds. Eleanor didn't have much, but she had the essentials. A modest home, a happy son, a baby on the way, and a friend like Sarah, who had been her rock in the darkest moments. Sometimes they sat together, drinking coffee, laughing, remembering everything they had been through. "Do you realize you got out of there?" Sarah said one night. "That you did it on your own, with your own steps." Eleanor nodded with a slight smile. "And if they wrote it as a story, no one would believe it. But it's real, and you are the proof." And she was right. The day Sophia was born, Eleanor cried as never before, not from pain, but from emotion. She had a new life in her arms, one that would never know fear or shouting or the heavy silence of a broken home. Sophia arrived calmly, with the sweetness of one who knows she is awaited. And when Leo met her for the first time, he leaned over, kissed her forehead, and said, "Hi, little sister. Don't worry. I'm going to take care of you." Eleanor looked at them, and she knew she had triumphed. The storm had been long, fierce, relentless, but not infinite, and now another stage was beginning, one where love didn't hurt, where hugs didn't hide scars, where happiness wasn't a mask, but a real state. A life with scars, yes, but also with wings. And in that new beginning, as Leo laughed, Sophia slept, and the sun set slowly over the clouds of Seattle. Eleanor wrote a final sentence in her notebook. I will never again be less than what I deserve. If you enjoyed this story and were moved by its message, please like the video, subscribe, and leave us your comments. Your support is invaluable for us to continue sharing stories. Tell us what score you give this story from 1 to 100 in the comments. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Comment now.